Today we're going to have a short introduction to Anglo-Saxon literature. So we're going to start our literature by looking at the Celts. Now the literature began in England with the Celtic Druids. Now the Druids would memorize and recite poems for special occasions. So then we move away from the Celts and move into what we're looking for, the Anglo-Saxons. So the Anglo-Saxon performers known as Scots recited poems for entertainment. So it started with the Celtic Druids, and we see the Anglo-Saxon people picking up the same idea. Now, a Scot was a professional tribal poet who celebrated cultural values by singing epics on festive occasions. So how did they go about doing this? Well, the recitation was often accompanied by a harp, and the idea of ominous fate or weird found throughout the works. A lot of times they were having some sort of journey or some sort of quest, there'd be epic heroes, but there was always this idea of an ominous fate or weird. Now, it usually contains a mix of Christian and pagan ideas. As we see Christianity starting to come in more strongly into Anglo-Saxon literature, you're going to see that with the mixture of the original Celtic Druid kind of ideas. Now, only about 30,000 lines of Anglo-Saxon verse still exist for us to look at today. So when we look at poetic devices, what's interesting is that there's no end rhyme. It'd be very difficult for the people, the Scots, to try and figure out how to do the stories when there's no end rhyme. So that's why we see a main thought or idea that often runs over from line to line. That main thought or idea is what kept them going. Now the lines would also contain caesuras, or midline pauses, probably for a time for them to either pluck the harp or to take a breath. Poems would use alliteration, the repetition of initial consonant sounds, and they would also contain kennings, which are compound metaphorical phrases that rename concrete nouns, such as the sea road, which would be another word for the ocean. So when we look at Anglo-Saxon poetry, we divide them into two main categories. You have the heroic poems and the elegiac poems. When we take a look at heroic poetry from the Anglo-Saxons, they retell the achievements of warriors that were involved in great battles. The most important heroic Anglo-Saxon work that we have to date is Beowulf. So Beowulf is the national epic of England. We don't know the name of the author. As a matter of fact, we don't believe we have the entire piece, but we have most of it. It also includes the values of warrior society, which would include dignity, bravery, and strength in battle. The other type of poetry is known as elegiac poetry. Now, this is a lyric poem that mourns the loss of someone, or it looks to the past. So a famous example of Anglo-Saxon elegiac poetry would be the Seafarer. Again, the author is unknown, but our speaker or narrator in the poem is the sailor that's reflecting upon their life. And it includes the values of the time period, but it also shows an evidence of changing traditional ways of life. Well, that was the end of your brief introduction to Anglo-Saxon poetry. If you guys have any other ideas that you'd like for me to do when it comes to Anglo-Saxon literature, or maybe perhaps you'd like to hear more about the Seafarer or Beowulf, please let me know down in the comments. If you would like or subscribe as well to the channel, that'd be great as well. Thanks for stopping by.